Welcome. We are honored here today to be with Don Paul Kahl to speak with you all. And Don Paul is currently based in Belgium and
Yep.
is a saxophone player from the United States living in Belgium. So, uh, Don Paul, maybe you want to say a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in Belgium.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm really excited to talk about my career and maybe to hear from your questions about maybe how an American saxophonist can necessarily, go to Europe and do things and, be successful in that realm. So I'm interested, I'll speak a little bit about myself and my trajectory and how I've come to be now, and then I'd love to hear questions from you guys. So, yeah, I was born and raised in a little first Newport, which is the middle of nowhere, and then Millerstown, which is the neighbor to the middle of nowhere town. So I did like the whole, high school band thing, the all state, the districts, regional kind of thing, and then I decided to study music at school. And where did I go? I went to the closest university with the fan. I don't know if you know her, Gail Levinsky. She's fantastic. You should check her out if you don't know her. She's doing some really great things, and especially in the realm of education. So I did my bachelor's there, and then I got a full ride to go to study at University of Florida, where I did my master's with Jonathan Helton, and he was also on sabbatical for a year, so I did 1 year with Jeff Dybel, who's at FSU now. So that was a really great year for me or 2 years rather, because I got to really experience two different styles. I mean, I got really old French school with Jonathan Helton, and I got like the absolute opposite, kind of the newest of the newest things in, you know, contemporary modern saxophone with Jeff Dybel. And in my second year there, I had really decided that, okay, I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to go for the DMA right away, or do I want to, pursue other things? Do I want to go into, business? I was thinking about, do I want to go into marketing? I was actually thinking about doing really absolutely out of saxophone things. And I, yeah, Dr. Helton, Jonathan Helton at that point was like, well, why don't you study in Paris? And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I could study in Paris for you, just do a whole expat thing and not worry about it, and, just live the life in Europe for a bit. And I applied for a scholarship with the American House. Well, allez, it's at the Cité Universitaire, the university city. It doesn't really capture the essence in a translation. It's basically a big like plot of land next to this beautiful garden in Paris that has all of different houses that house different students coming from all different countries. So we had the Belgian house right next door. We had the UK house. We had the Japanese house. X, Y, and Z, all kinds of different places where there were sometimes 500, 600 students living there at one time. And I applied for their scholarship in the American House for artists to study in Paris for 1 year. And I got the scholarship. So it was a fully paid scholarship in France. Living and all my expenses were basically paid for through the scholarship. So I said, okay, I'm going to go study with Jean-Michel Goury at Boulogne-Billancourt. And Goury was fantastic for me because coming from Dr. Levinsky and then going to Dr. Helton and having a little taste of contemporary playing modern music with Jeff Dybel really, made me want to do that more. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I can really express myself, and I should really dive into that. And so Goury was a really good choice for me. I could have gone to study with Vincent David. I mean, also kind of in the same realm, but more classically, traditionally based. And I thought, no, I really want to go something absolutely left field of everything. And in France, Guri is that. So I studied with him for 2 years, but my first year it was a Landex year, so the Jean-Marie Landex competition, and so I made it my mission to like do well in the competition. I didn't have any kind of delusions of grandeur. I knew that I just needed to practice a lot, and I wanted to do well. And actually, in my mind, I thought, okay, if I pass the first round, I'll be great. So when I passed the first round at the Landex competition, I thought, okay, I'm really happy now. I succeeded. And then when I passed the second round to the final round, I thought, oh God, I don't like what happened. Like who was actually listening to me? Like, please, come on. And then I did really well in the competition, and I was really happy. And with I agree with the judges and what they said. So that kind of launched myself a little bit as kind of being established, and someone that people could.
Did he just freeze for all of you as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Am I frozen?
I can hear you, but you're definitely frozen, Don Paul.
Am I moving?
Okie dokie.
I know. Can you hear me, and can you see me?
I can hear you.
No, neither. But you can't see me. That's so strange.
You're just frozen.
I will stop my video. Okay, stopping video. I apologize, everyone.
That's fine. It happens.
Okay, I started my video. I don't know if you can see me anymore.
Uh, I can. I can see you.
Oh, you can. Can other people see me? Yes, or no?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and then I'll keep talking. So, yeah, long decks. So I did really well in the long decks competition, and kind of jump started my career, and I could go to places in Paris and seek out concerts, and people would give me the time of day to kind of speak with me. And I from there, in my first year, I met a Belgian in living in Paris, because the Belgian, as I said, the Belgian house was right next to the American house, and of course we go to get beers at the same place. And I met a Belgian, and I decided, okay, I really do want to see if this works, because the easy thing could have been, okay, I'm gonna move back to the U.S., start my DMA, and go on that trajectory. A very classical kind of idea, at least in the U.S., of what is going on there. So I thought, okay, give myself a couple more years. Why not? Well, a couple more years. Well, yeah. And then I moved to Belgium to be with this person, and eventually it didn't work out, but that's okay, because I had already established a lot of contacts and a lot of different things, and I started to do my PhD actually here in Ghent, Belgium, where I'm studying advanced techniques of saxophone playing. So beyond necessarily what's in the Marcus Weiss book, or some things that Daniel Kinsey is talking about, but says them completely wrong, unfortunately. So my research is on saxophone without mouthpiece techniques, the aesthetics of that, what is possible, what pieces are already used, commissioning pieces that are really inherent to this technique. So that's what I'm working on now. Also, in addition to it, I am working on a CD, my first solo CD, and that's basically and then very recently I have gained, kind of got through another threshold. I've been invited to join an artist roster for an artist management company. So from now, as a soloist. So that's my soloist life, and on the side of it, I have two, now three ensembles. One in Belgium, but it's very young. But I have two major ensembles. One is based in Switzerland. It's the Ensemble du Bout du Monde. It's my saxophone quartet, where I play baritone in it. And we're working with a lot of cultural centers throughout Europe, and working on big projects with the composers here in Europe, also in the US, and some in Asia as well, but mostly European based composers to work on new works for saxophone quartet that are outside the necessarily norm of what you consider like a contemporary saxophone quartet. If you consider like, you know, our basic, you know, our traditional repertoire is like Zas and Rash by Donatoni. So, you know, these are our staple pieces that we started from and then are building from that. And then my other ensemble, which is more traditional, is based in the US. It's Duo Entre Nous, it's saxophone and clarinet. And we are actually finishing our debut recording. If I can fly from Belgium to so hopefully, well, probably not, but hopefully. And then so that'll be released next summer. And then I have a new ensemble, which is a reed quintet here in Belgium, which is also quite traditional classical things that we're doing. So most of the things that I've really taken from my French kind of experience are in my solo playing and with my quartet, who I also met while in France. So that makes a lot of sense. But this is basically my whole, you know, kind of trajectory and career path things. I mean, maybe maybe I can like ask you or open it up to questions from you and to see like what you are, where are you in your career, what are you thinking about in terms of like post bachelor's or post masters and post doctorate, what you want to do, if maybe Europe is in your, you know, in your thoughts. Anyway, thanks.
Oh, do you want to go first, Spencer?
You can go first.
All right. So I know that like when you're a musician in Europe, it's very like radically different compared to being a musician in the U.S. in terms of like easier to access things like healthcare and stuff like that. So I was wondering if you talk about like being that you are like American who lives in Europe. I wonder if you like talk about like the differences that you see in like the musicians in Europe versus America in terms of like how much they can access and what they can do.
Yeah, in terms of healthcare, I mean, it's just a basic thing here in Europe that everyone, no matter what they, you know, what their career path is, that you just get very good healthcare no matter what. And I pay, I don't, well, I'm switching my thing now because of my boyfriend, but I think I pay like what 182 euros per year for my healthcare, and that's just based on me being freelance, a musician, and you know, like that's just normal for everyone. I mean, that's just what it is. So that so it's not basically me being a musician because I get like a special rate or anything. It's the whole Bernie kind of stance, you know. You just get healthcare because you should have healthcare. But in terms of being, you know, as a musician in general, I think there are quite stark differences between what I see going on in the U.S. and what I see going on in Europe. So mainly in terms of access to cultural centers, to places that will, for example, want to speak with you. I mean, you have to have some kind of clout to your name, and you have to have some kind of like, you know, reputation, or you bring them a product, you bring a CD, and then you say, listen to this and see if we can do a project together, or you know someone. I mean, these dialogues happen quite often and are frequent. And I feel that in the US, it's a little bit, you have to know the right people to get into the kind of places that will do that for you, or you have to be someone very, 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 you know, renowned. And I think the academic kind of side of things in the U.S. isn't necessarily so present in Europe. So basically, we don't go to university in Europe to study music. You go to the Hochschule, or you know, it doesn't really translate as high school. It's just a higher education school, but it is very much different than what a university is considered. So you don't you don't get that kind of like echelon of, okay, academic kind of aspect of concertizing or performing is completely something else. And so the musicians that are working um, in the performing career as opposed to academia really have access to a lot of different things. So I yeah, that's probably the biggest difference. I also see like a lot of aesthetic differences in terms of what is going on, and that differs per country as well. So Belgium has a completely different kind of scene than the Netherlands, where Belgium has quite a lot of different things, and it can be one day extremely classical and the next day extremely modern. But most of those things are most modern things that you're going to be doing. It's not going to be, me sitting or standing on stage playing like Hard by Loba. It's going to be me working on an improvisation with a designer or a visual designer, working things out in this kind of way. And maybe I can slip some reference to some piece in, but it's not going to be that I can, stand on stage and play, an hour of contemporary music. No, it's not interesting anymore, because the more transdisciplinary it gets, the easier it is to get into the concert hall a little bit. I think I diverted, but yeah, in terms of being a musician in Europe versus America, I do feel that like things are just set up in place that you can do so a little bit more easily. Other questions?
Sure. So I'm kind of in a different vein. Uh, my goals are more um, music technology based and recording. So that's kind
Okay.
of my study. Uh, so I wonder if you could talk about. I see kind of uh, a reckoning coming, what I call the death of the concert hall.
Yeah.
And so in my vein, uh, the traditional path for me would be learn recording techniques and then get a job in a recording studio. But
Right.
there's also in the back of my mind, like everyone nowadays can download a DAW and they can buy a mic and they can become their own producer and recorder. So in the traditional sense of saxophone playing, like you were talking, like you go to school, you learn some pieces, you get a doctorate, and you go into education, which I think is a lot of the traditional paths for other people in this uh, conversation. So what do you see? I guess from the European lens of kind of that death of the concert hall, and what do you suggest for people who are thinking of maybe more non-traditional routes in music?
Yeah. Into this domain of either entering technology into your practice or suffering and dying, and I think a lot of people in Europe have also gotten on that bandwagon. Now, Ali, things are still despite that, the orchestras are still rehearsing, they are still producing different things, but um, I think in a domain in Europe where yeah, it's a hard question actually, because I don't necessarily think that people are going. I think people are still waiting out what they want to do, and I don't think that like the I don't think people are necessarily taking an alternative kind of career path to music. I think that it was always there actually in the background, and just now it's starting to seem that it needs to be present even more. So, um, yeah, yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, like for example, I know that there's this concert series here in Belgium, in Brussels, that has suffered really, really greatly, and so to get around that, they are producing these storytelling kind of concert aspects, and it's all done, like pre-recorded, and the what they're doing is live, and they show exactly what they're doing. So I think that's also very interesting in terms of like the editing, so that that what's there has actually been performed live. It's not some mashed together kind of thing. It's really something that you can experience as if you're going to the concert hall. But I do know that the people that are interested in such a thing aren't, they like the experience of going to the concert hall and to kind of get out and do something else with their life. And I think in Europe that's a really big part of the cultural life of a city, to go and to actually experience the thing instead of sitting behind your desk or and watching on the computer, or sitting on your couch and then streaming to your TV. It's a different experience. I think a lot of people don't necessarily get the idea that that's a concert experience anymore. And I think I do agree with you that we are, approaching somewhat the death of a concert hall kind of situation. But I think like I think it will be a sad day that we can't like perform anymore, and that everything will be under the lens of a technical aspect. Because as wonderful as it is, I still think that like there is something to sitting in a hall, or even a room, even a practice room, and listening to your friends, or listening to live music performed, no matter what you're doing. And so I think I don't think Ali, between the US and Europe in that sense, I think yeah, there isn't, for me there's a bit no difference, because I think that no matter what, the concert halls are going to come back in some capacity, hope, if they survive. But I think that a mesh of the two medias has to occur a little bit. I don't know if I answered your question very, very well, so feel free to like counter my arguments.
No, I agree with you. I just kind of think the way that we teach music, specifically here at Virginia Tech, hasn't changed in like 50 years. We're still teaching very kind of antiquated curriculum. And so if your idea was, my goal is to be first violinist in the New York Phil, the New York Phil is closed right now, and it might not reopen. There's just no telling yet. So, like, for someone who's been in a university for 4 years, and you thought that your path was very traditional and very clear, but now, just due to the environment, your plans might change very spontaneously. And like, maybe if you could speak to like adapting.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that happening everywhere. I mean, just yesterday, my duo partner, she needs to record something for her wind quintet. She works at the University of Arizona. She's on the faculty, and she's texting me about, okay, what program do you use to edit your videos, Don Paul? And I'm like, yeah, Final Cut Pro X, like, it's just normal for me. And she's like, yeah, but how do you learn to use it? And I was like, I mean, I downloaded the program, I tinkered around with it for a while, and then I looked at it like 3 YouTube videos, and now I feel good about it, And any time that I need to do something strange, I know how to work around the thing. So I think everyone is adapting to using more technology, to working on things that they're not comfortable with and trying to put it out there. And I think that's just the reality of the human condition, even, is to stay relevant, you have to change. I mean, even I was speaking about my traditional like French teacher, Jonathan Helton. I mean, he's also doing like playing French repertoire like Dubois or whatever, with a pianist socially distant from totally different like parts of the state, even live on thing. And I'm like, okay, if Jonathan Helton can do it, and if he's listening to the live on YouTube right now, love you. But that's great. That's fantastic. I'm like so proud of him that he's able to do that. And I think that's like the utmost like example of adaptability at this time. And a lot of that's gonna stay post Corona. I mean, I don't know what the next year, 2 years, 3 years are gonna look like. Hopefully by then we're gonna have something that puts us into some sense of having I don't want to say normal, because I don't think our normal was at all normal, but you know, we're gonna get to a place where there is something that we can go back to traveling and we can go back to the concert hall, whatever survives there. And I think like having a mix of those things is never gonna go away. We're never gonna
Don Paul, if you can hear me, you just froze again.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can now. There you go.
Okay. What was I saying? I'm sorry about the situation. I if I can speak just quickly about like my experience with this kind of adaptability between the U.S. and Europe in terms of technological things. I think that the conservatory is still meant as a conservatory, and that they're not going to teach necessarily you skills to develop your this kind of adaptable to technological like changes unless that's a course that you're specifically taking. And I think that those courses are still meant for composers, one, first of all, and two, for those that are doing sound engineering or video editing, these kind of things. Yes. So I think that still the conservatory is meant as a conservative space still, even now. I mean, I have some friends that are still at the conservatory that I am talking with, and I see that they're doing just the same things. They have their masks on, whatever. They may release a video every now and then that looks somewhat nice and that has, you know, great sound quality, but that's the extent to it. And I think that like going further is going to take a lot more. I mean, working with different channels, or you know, really getting into Max MSP, or going and you know, coding your own kind of, you know, sound collage, or working with someone that's a, you know, a sound designer or a stage designer. So production, creating production, I don't think anybody's going to necessarily do that, you know, while they're sitting at home. I think that, you know, they're still going to play their saxophone and they're going to, you know, promote themselves on social media and do the easy thing, because we're still somewhat waiting out these changes, even though, you know, we're quite far into it at this point. You have you is that was that a better answer? I think I got somewhere with that.
Yeah, I definitely think that like you can stick to the traditional, but if you leave the university and you've never recorded yourself and edited that and like made a video and just having those skills working in those softwares, you're gonna have to ask somebody else to do it eventually.
Indeed, indeed, and you know those things are really hard to do if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, for me, I was maybe at when I was studying at Susquehanna, for example, in my bachelor's, we were just working. I mean, it was like the first year that we were working in GarageBand. I mean, and it was like a big thing, like to do any kind of sound editing. So I had to teach myself all of these kind of things. You know, how do I make a good recording myself? I mean, I'm not gonna doubt the or say that I'm just as good as a fantastic sound engineer. No, I mean at the end of the day, I'm a saxophonist, and that classify myself. I have the skills now because I had to make some I don't know if I can say that word, really bad recordings of myself and edit them, and I saw, okay, well, you know, I don't have the skills to do this. So and you just get better each time, and I think that now people are really realizing that. I mean, yeah, the amount of like recordings that I see on Instagram like passing by, or people releasing YouTube videos, I mean, it's a lot. And so I think that people are getting
Bummer. You're frozen, Don Paul. I don't know if you can hear me. Super bummer.
I'm so sorry, everyone. My apologies.
That's okay.
I don't know what you
It's the
heard
internet.
last, but yeah. Are there other questions or rebuttals, or what do you guys do? I mean, I don't know what your policy is in your syllabus right now, Kyle, but maybe are you having your students do like editing and video editing, sound editing, or working with others via distance?
Well, the answer to that is yes and no. Um, I think I've told some of the students, maybe I've told you all. I think at one point in time, a year ago, having taught a bunch of online classes myself, that was a skill I put on my CV. Hey, I've taught a lot of online classes. Now I have removed that from my resume because it's irrelevant. Everybody's taught online classes. And so, to one degree or another, you all have to adapt to the situation at hand, which means that to some little degree, you have to make recordings. I mean, our juries this semester are completely pre-recorded. So that means that at the end of the day, you got to like set up a little system and video. It's another layer that previously was optional and now it's required. And here we are.
But I think that that's really great, though. I mean, like, I wish I had the structure in place in my undergrad and my my masters to do recordings and to borrow really great equipment. I mean, I obsess over some of these microphones that I want to buy, and I just cannot afford them because they're so freaking expensive, and I want them because they sound amazing. And I know that the University of Florida has a budget where those things are pennies to them, or the or Susquehanna University has those things, and like just to get your hands on those things if you're on campus, still on campus in some kind of way, and just to play with it in a safe environment almost, because whatever I'm doing a recording, it's never really safe environment. I'm going to be critiqued out the wazoo. Like I think for you guys, just go and explore and have fun with it, because now that's all you can do really. So yeah, I mean, that's really funny that you took it off your resume in that teaching online classes, because yeah, everyone has that skill now. But yeah, funny. Other questions? What about, is anybody like thinking about like studying in Europe, or after COVID is no longer a thing, when you can actually fly to Europe for once? Anyone? No one?
I actually plan on trying to
Or
travel to
questions
Europe.
about the?
Oops. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay. So
I can hear you, but it's very soft.
oh, okay. Let me take out my.
Um, I plan on maybe going to Europe and studying there at some point, because I technically don't want to go on the traditional route in a way because of with everything that's going on. So I thought it would be interesting to maybe like go to Italy or go to France and try to like do something over there. So yeah.
And what year are you at the moment?
I am a sophomore right now.
Okay, and do you want to study saxophone, or do you want to study music, or do something in music, or something else, or you want to travel? I mean, they're all different routes.
Right now, I guess study saxophone. I haven't really thought that much into it. I just know that I would like to travel and not be stuck in America for very long. So.
I absolutely understand that. Yeah, indeed. So I think France is a very traditional route for studying. I mean, I think there are a lot of scholarships that have been cultivated over the past 50 to 100 years for Americans to come to France to study. So I received just one of, I don't know, off the top of my head, maybe 5 scholarships for musicians that I know of. And I think that it's a really nice place that you can go to and really know what's going on, because it's within our tradition. I mean, the American kind of school of saxophone playing is based off of a lot of French playing, and a lot of clarinet playing actually. So I think that it's a comfortable place. If I can give you some advice, because as a I grew up in the middle of nowhere. If you like look at Millerstown, Pennsylvania, it is nowhere on the map. And start studying that language now, like yesterday. Start studying it. Yeah, even if you have the inkling to go study anywhere else, especially you said Italy and France, they do not speak English at all. So when I arrived in Paris, it was, and I even studied French, it was the worst. I was miserable for, I don't know, the first 7 weeks before I was able to actually talk to someone. So that's my big advice to anybody that wants at all to study in a different country. Um, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of teachers there. I mean, maybe you're thinking, oh, I'd love to go study with Claude Delong. Then, okay, fine. He's probably going to retire soon anyway. But it's really difficult for Americans to get into this NSM, where he teaches, because it's based off of a completely different system than we're, even remotely around. But there's Jean-Michel Bury right outside Paris. There's Vincent David, who will probably take over for Claude when Claude decides to stop. And then there's Jérôme Lain. There's plenty of people to study with. I mean, you can go, and the great thing about Europe is that what I did in my first year, because I really wanted to take my stuff to other teachers because it was a competition year, I went all over Europe and took lessons, and it was easy because I also got to travel, which I wanted to do because at that time it was only a year in Paris that I was going to stay for. And so I took a lesson with Lars. I took a lesson with Arno. I took a lesson with Raf. I took a lesson with what's his name in Lyon. Anyway, that guy. I took a lesson with Maribé. I took a lesson with some Spanish people that were going through Belgium. I mean, I went through it all, and I really wanted to go and do that. And that's the easy thing in Europe because it's so well connected. I mean, you could get a flight for 20 euros to Milan, for example, from Belgium, and that's round trip. And we don't have that in the US at all. So that's the really great thing about that. So if for example, you want to go to France, for example, and then also get the Italian experience, you can do the two. That's absolutely possible. So yeah, I mean, a lot of scholarships, and I can send the ones that I know to Kyle, and he can send them to everyone. I don't know if you prefer Dr. Hutchins, but
did the scholarship you win, was that the Huntington Beeb?
No, but I did apply for it, and they completely rejected me for the Beeb. But I got the Harriet Hale Woolley scholarship, so that was the one offered by the American House, which is nice because it's like 10,000 euros, a place to stay, and so I really was fine. I mean, you're not going to live in luxury at all. I didn't, even though you're living in like the most luxurious place in Europe, in Paris. I mean, it was very, very small, but I got to practice at my place from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. and that's all I wanted, and that's all I needed. So yeah. Other questions or European inquiries? Or about music, or in general, like my experiences that you know of? Or Spencer, you turned off your... Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if you could expand more on saxophone without a mouthpiece, because that sounded really interesting.
Sure, just don't steal my ideas. So... so I So I did this piece when I was studying with Jean-Michel called Security One by this IRCAM composer. He's Peruvian French, named Juan Arroyo, and I was fascinated by it because it said for amplified tenor saxophone without mouthpiece and electronics. Like, whoa. Cool, let's get into that. What is all of that about? And I started to look at the score, and he worked with Hikuri Imimoto on it while she was studying in Paris with Claude. And the piece really explores all of these different things that I never had encountered. So this was kind of the basis for for what later would become my dissertation topic on saxophone without mouthpiece. And from there, I learned that, okay, it's not actually that new of a technique because the piece was was also using these techniques and working with him very, very, working on them quite often. I mean, he was doing everything. If you know his Saxology book, you know that he tried to every kind of sound that's coming out of the saxophone. So what I decided to do was look at that text, and what I found was that what he's saying isn't necessarily true. He's just saying, as we would say in French, du n'importe quoi. He was saying just whatever came out of his mouth. And so I have identified 4 major techniques that pertain to the saxophone without mouthpiece practice, and those are air pitch, then we have saxo flute hybridity, then trumpet sounds, and tongue rams. So I classify them in these 2 ways because the two, sorry, my camera's focusing. So I classify them in these 2 ways because one are closed tube and one are open tube. So when the mouth is going to go on the saxophone as if the mouthpiece is there, it's closed tube, and open tube is like air pitch, where you're not closing off the tube. So the first 2 techniques, air pitch, is where you blow across or through the neck piece to create, in essence, an air pitch. They're simple techniques. Huh? When you change the fingerings, you change the pitch, but also whenever you change the direction in which you are playing, you change the pitch. Then maybe I can actually show it once. Sorry, it's like middle of the night here, so not middle of the night, but it's late, and my neighbors would hate me if I had my saxophone on. 1 second. So, for example, so we have air. The air pitch is when we blow across the neck piece. Then the pitch changes based on the fingerings. Of course, I don't have the whole saxophone, so you don't hear the whole thing. The next is saxo flute hybridity, which is a bit of the same kind of technique. However, we're going to play it as if it's a flute. I haven't actually tried on it. Just the neck piece. And fingerings change based on the fingering you use. This is a really, really, really limited technique because the saxophone is not it's a conical instrument. It's not a cylindrical instrument like the flute. So we have a lot of possibilities for the fingerings are really screwed up, and you can't necessarily make them come out. So just the top stack in on alto, tenor, and baritone actually work for that. With soprano and sopranino, which I don't know if you're familiar with the techniques of that Philippe Geist uses in his improvisations. He's also working with this quite a lot on sopranino, and he can do crazy things with it. He's a really incredible player with it, but he doesn't do it on the bigger instruments. So I wanted to see, can that happen? And indeed it can. Then we go to the closed techniques, closed tube techniques. It's tongue ram. So the same, it's kind of like our slap tongue, but or even our tongue ram that we do with the mouthpiece. We're jamming the tongue inside the tube, and it create the resultant attack there creates an echo through the horn, and of course it changes per fingering. And then the last is very simple, is the trumpet sounds technique. So you buzz as if you're playing a brass instrument. And here we have a lot more possibilities because we play off of maybe 3-4 harmonic spectrums based on the instrument, of course. So those are the techniques roughly. Do you have questions about them? Because maybe they, there's other things that you can do with them, but I'm interested to see your questions.
Can you just name some of the works you were discussing that have those techniques in them, so I can listen to them when we get out of here?
I can put some in the chat.
Oh, that'd be
So
great. Thank you.
first is Juan Arroyo. He has 3 pieces that he's done this: Security 1, Security 4, and Security 10. So those, the 1, 4, and 10 actually designate how many players there are. And it's always with electronics. So 1 is his solo piece for tenor, 4 is his quartet, so SATB, and then he has 10, which has like 2 or 3 sopraninos and 4 sopranos, and the rest are tenors or something. It's a very strange piece. Then a piece that's a bit older that was for Daniel Kinsey was by Jean-Claude Rizet. I don't know if you know this piece. It's called Voilement. No, it's changing. There we go. Jean-Claude Rizet, Voilement. Fantastic piece with tenor saxophone and electronics. And here he actually uses both because, as I said, they're simple techniques and the pitch content is quite limited what you can do with it. And back in the 80s, things weren't really well understood. Kinsey doesn't explain them super well. And what he writes down in terms of pitch content is absolutely wrong. So, a lot of it is a bit, you do what you want with that section and let's just do whatever, Okay, here's a little tongue ram here because that's easy. Here's a little air pitch, and then do whatever you want for trumpet sounds. Just make it sound like XYZ. Some other pieces. So this piece is called Caldero Saxo by Philippe Geis, and actually he writes it for himself as soloist, playing sopranino saxophone. So I think you can hear quite a few interpretations of this on YouTube. I can send these scores to Kahl as well, and he can distribute them if you'd like. Another one, which is a really cool piece, and if you are doing any like baritone and electronics things, I would absolutely recommend it. It's by Germán Alonso. I think I have the accent incorrect, but that's okay. And it's called El Gran Cabrón, which is so cool. And I think it would work really great in this like political era because you can kind of make connections there. But it's for baritone saxophone without mouthpiece and with mouthpiece and electronics. And he really explores the technique really well, really thoroughly. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Some other pieces off the top of my head. A really, really cool one that my quartet has recorded, and I think it's one of the best examples of this, is Der blutige Schaffner. This piece, so Der blutige Schaffner in German means like the bloody conductor, and specifically a train conductor. And what Robin Hoffman does is that he actually orchestrates through the quartet, this long, it's a very long piece, 22 minutes, something like this, of getting to the train, getting on the train leaving, it's actually derailing and everyone dying in the piece. So it's very, very, very out there kind of craziness. And in the middle of it, he has a fugue that he writes for saxophone without mouthpiece, and it is fantastic. And I would, I could plug my quartet, or you can listen to whomever, but it's a really, really, really fun piece. So those are just 5 off the top of my head, but I've identified maybe 34, 35 pieces at the moment, and I still continue to discover new pieces. Basically, once every month, I'm finding a new piece that's there. Can really mock in voices within voice within. Okay, I have to know this piece. I don't know this piece. Yes, continue to write other pieces, and then I can add them. yeah, they're really, really great pieces. I mean, of course, I got Crosswind by Georges Pergis, and this is actually really great piece as an example. So, if you've ever seen the score, and then you go to look at Zasox with Jean-Michel Goury, with Marcus Weiss, with Serge Bertocchi, they play it with like actual trumpet, horn, and trombone and tuba mouthpieces, and because it's a lot of trumpet sounds. But actually, if you look at the score, it's not written. And I spoke to Paris, and he's like, "Yeah, I never meant actually that. They just did whatever they wanted, and now it seems to be a common practice for people." So, so actually, is there any other kind? Oh yes. Um, so actually, you shouldn't be playing it with it. So at first, my research had included, okay, we need to also consider what's going to happen if we add something extra onto the end of the mouthpiece. But then I found out actually no. Okay, I'm not going to go down that road because yeah, it's not written in the score, and it's just a performance practice thing that has become standard for Zasox, and that people are doing incorrectly based on that. But yeah.
I did that piece, Crosswind, with Opera Geese and Darmstadt in 2016.
Oh yeah.
And Marcus had us all get like pieces of tube to add to the end of it. And Marcus was very much like, oh, it makes a huge difference. And then Opera Geese was like, you could do it, you could not. Because he really didn't care, it seemed, a lot about some of the interpretation of his work. Like, we had this public event with him where we played the piece and then we kind of workshopped it for the next 45 minutes. And we would ask him like, oh, should we play it like this or like this? And we had two really opposing ideas coming from the music. And he was like, oh, yes, either way, it's fine.
He's a super open guy. I mean, that's really great experience that you had with him, and also with Marcus. I mean, Marcus was actually my research advisor at the beginning of my trajectory, and then things shifted, and now I am with someone else. But but you know, it was really enlightening to work in that kind of Swiss atmosphere, and that seems almost exactly Swiss. So either this or that, it's fine. You know, it's okay. Just play my music.
Very neutral.
So yeah. Any other questions? A saxophone without mouthpiece or music related? I have to take all of these things. Oh, I don't think I can copy these things from the chat.
I can send to you.
Anyway.
It'll.
Okay, thank you.
Spit out a text of the chat after we're done here.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Other questions from anyone? Maybe we can go quickly through and like, what years are you all in?
I'm a senior.
Senior. And you said you're a sophomore, Maggie. Spencer's a senior.
I'm a freshman, so yeah.
Okay, Philip is a freshman. Okay. And
I'm a freshman.
And then James.
Also a freshman.
Uh-huh.
Okay, thank you. So for the we lost James along the way.
He's in like two Zoom calls right now, I believe.
Yeah,
he has a string studio at the same time we have saxophone studio.
He's got a 2 dates to the prom scenario with instrumental studios.
Oh wow, that's intense.
And we're missing the juniors from this call currently.
Okay.
But yeah, everybody here I would just say everybody here at Virginia Tech is and I think this is a very strong suit of this studio, but everybody really has kind of a different trajectory that they're interested in pursuing. So it's really valuable for you to share your trajectory and how you got to be where you are, because, you know, I joke about this sometimes. I think probably everyone here has heard me joke about this, but I think that by the time you get your undergraduate degree, you know everything. And when you get your master's degree, you figure out you actually know nothing. And by the time you get the PhD, you realize nobody else knows anything either. We're all just making this shit up as we go along.
That's actually very true. I mean, I mean, the more that I keep going down this research path and I keep doing as I'm doing, I realize that, you know, it's just shot in the dark each time. I'm reinventing everything again and again and again. And then, okay, you have a global pandemic and your entire life gets blown up as well. And that's for everyone. But more so, you know, for in the cultural sector, I mean, it's always been so, yeah, weak in terms of funding, in terms of who's actually gonna support us, you know, even just what we do. We always have to really make a statement for ourselves and how, you know, really fight for it. And I don't think that'll change, but I think that, you know, a lot of things, you know, are canceled and postponed, and that puts a weight on people. And what do you do at home for months and months and months? And you have to keep yourself busy for somehow. And, you know, myself as a freelance artist, I mean, I kind of, at the beginning of it, I was just like, you know, when my entire schedule of things just totally fell through, I was like, how am I gonna live? What's going on? Oh my God, like, how am I gonna do this? And, you know, it was a couple months of like kind of just practicing, and now things seem like they're happening all the time, and I'm doing and doing and doing and doing and doing, and my days are filled up. So, you know, I think it does speak to the adaptability, going back to Spencer's question, I think of musicians, of artists in general. I mean, you know, I think people have had to crawl out of their shells, you know, in terms of, you know, being introverted, you know, artists, self-thinking, philosophical artists too. Okay, if I don't do this thing where I'm out there, then I'm gonna become irrelevant. I'm gonna become, you know, non-existent, and that's, I think, is, yeah, that's sad, because, you know, a lot of these artists are fantastic. It goes even further than just musicians. I mean, some of my friends, painters or graphic designers, I mean, that are artistic graphic designers. These people, it's hard. It's not easy. Photographers, I mean, I just had a photo session for my CD yesterday, and she was like, you know, I've been hit so hard, and I was like, yeah, but, you know, you could do wedding photography and make a lot of money. And she's like, yeah, what weddings? And I was like, oh yeah, okay, oops. So yeah, I think it's hard for all musicians at this moment. But yeah. Anyway, other questions from you guys or thoughts? Kyle, do you have any questions for me?
What are you working on right now?
So I'm doing I'm working on my solo CD because my quartet CD fell through because we couldn't get together while for COVID. So I thought, well, in the next year I can record a CD. It's been on the things to do. So what's on my stand right now is Kenichi Sukiguchi's Esposos Fugaces. It's this, like, you know, very conservatory piece, you know, very virtuosic 21st century virtuosity piece. So that's right now. Otherwise, I'm doing 2 pieces for piano on the CD with piano. It's a very classical CD in my opinion, you know, in terms of saxophoning. So the one's by Greg Wanamaker, Night Set. The other piece is by Misha Zubko from the Skyline, and all of the pieces I was in collaboration to either primarily commission or it was a group commission, consortium. So those 2 pieces were consortium, and the rest are commissioned by me. Then I did a piece back in my master's degree called Duo the Moon. Really fun piece. If you want a little challenge on alto, it's a really fun piece. And then I'm going to do 3 new commissions. So I'm working with Stratis Minakakis, who is teaching theory and composition at the New England Conservatory of Music. He's writing me a solo baritone piece with and without mouthpiece. Swiss composer Eleni Rali, she's Greek Swiss. She's writing me a piece for tenor saxophone and spoken word. So I will be speaking somewhat in and out of the saxophone. It'll be they're poems that I will be speaking, and kind of moving towards getting the saxophone together. And what's that? South African, somewhere, all of those things. And he's writing me a piece for solo alto saxophone. So those are the things that I'm working on now. Working with those composers very closely, it seems every week. New things come in, but yeah, that's my big project right now for solo. And then on top of it, working with the quartet, we are planning our next performances, which are in June in Israel. So that's also on my mind, but that's really far ahead, and I don't want to think about the repertoire for that because it scares me.
I have another question for you, Don Paul. I get asked this all the time, and so I'm very curious to hear what your answer would be about this, because I know that you and I both play a bunch of contemporary music, modern music. So what do you tell people who hate it? Who don't like what you're playing, who come up after the concert and say, I hated all that?
Well, it happens a lot, actually, and or they just don't get it. I mean, I did a performance just this past Thursday with my reed quintet, and we played, David Biedenbender's Refraction, and it's like the nicest like contemporary piece, ever. It's really cool, really fun, accessible music. And someone said, "Oh, I really didn't like that piece because it was too out there." And I was like, "Okay, well, you got to experience it, though. I mean, weren't there really great parts in it too that you really liked? Couldn't you, grab onto something that you enjoyed?" "Oh, yeah, but it was just really out there, and I couldn't understand everything." And I was like, music isn't necessarily always to be understood, so easily. Maybe you need to go home and think about it for a little bit. So this is usually my response, or I say, I don't care. I'm sorry. If the person is going to come up to me and be really aggressive about it, I'm like, okay, thank you for coming to the concert, and I hope you have a great evening. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't let it bother me so much. And so I try to educate. I try to tell if there's a story that wasn't so necessarily inherent in the program note, or there wasn't program notes enough for it. I try to explain it, or I show the score, or I try to really get that person on board, because that person did come to a concert, so that's already really great. And the fact that they didn't enjoy something, that's still a feeling. They still had something. They were able to grab onto something even if they didn't like it, and that's still having. I mean, if I would rather someone have a reaction rather than not have a reaction. At the end of the day, I don't care if they like it or not. I put in my time and my heart and my everything in that performance. So it kind of stings, but at the end of the day, okay, there were 25 other people that thought it was fantastic, the same thing, and maybe there were 30 other people that hated it but didn't tell me. So in my head, those 30 people loved it. So you never know. And I think I think it's one, our first position is to educate afterwards, and two, then to say that it's okay to not like it, but there's also things to enjoy in it. And then third, to say, okay, that's your opinion, and okay. How do you respond to people, though? I'm curious.
I think it's awesome when somebody hates what I'm doing.
Okay.
It's not happened to me a lot, but I'm sure the students have heard this, but there's a memory that I have that I will probably cherish forever, where I played Alvin Lucier's Ever Present, flute, saxophone, piano, sine wave oscillators. And somebody came up to me after one of the performances of that. "I hate that piece. Don't ever do it again." And I was like, "That's awesome. I'm so glad you told me that. I love that you hated that."
That's amazing.
I think that's amazing. And then they had to keep clarifying. No, I didn't like it. I'm like, I know, but you felt some kind of way and you told me about it. So I mean, how many times do we leave the concert hall and immediately delete everything that we just experienced? That you forget about it entirely.
Exactly.
And that to me, like, the opposite of love is not hate. Hate and love are very closely related. Indifference is the opposite of those things. And so, I would rather you feel any kind of way about a performance versus nothing.
Exactly. I'm in the same position. I mean, as I said, being neutral in the middle and not really feeling anything, that's not what I'm going for. I want you to have an emotional response to my playing, to the piece, or whatever it is, the improvisation, anything. You have to have something. If that's so visceral to come up and say, I hated that piece, never do it again, that's fantastic as well. I mean, yeah. I mean, I may be like, oh, okay. I mean, you could have loved it though, but
Well, the other thing that I think about is that I'll tell you afterwards, but I don't want to say it here publicly. But there was a piece that I heard in Darmstadt that I hated it. I really had a strong reaction against it. I hated the piece.
Ritual One.
We're not going to talk about it publicly. But I really thought about it for months afterwards, and my position changed. I actually came around to it and was like, you know what? Actually, the piece is maybe the most brilliant piece I've ever heard. I think it's super smart. And I loved it, and I programmed it, and I had some of the students do it, and not just that, but like we had an external guest who came in and played a recital and did the same piece on it.
When that happened, I was pissed. I was pissed when that happened because I came for my first lesson. I think that was 2 years ago.
Something like this, yeah.
Like Kobe's you're obsessing over this piece, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. We're gonna program. I was like, all right, I'll hear it at the end of the school, and then I knew what the piece was about. So when I saw him do it, I was like, this looks oddly familiar. And then I heard the moment, and I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
That's right. And so for me, my own experience is the things that I love and the things that I hate, it really flips back and forth sometimes because it just has to do with my relationship to the music and what my mood is, frankly. I mean, so I've never been offended when somebody doesn't like what I do. It's fine. I mean, I think it's part of it. I don't like death metal. I just don't. I don't like country music. And that's saying something in Appalachia. I just don't like it.
It's saying something in Texas.
I'm a Texas boy. I just hate it. I mean, I can kind of get into some old school country like Johnny Cash or something like this, but I mean, George Strait and I mean, this kind of stuff is not for me. And that's fine. Who cares?
And who's to say that maybe with the permissibility of time that you will love this in 20 years, and your entire mind will shift as it did with this piece from Darmstadt. I mean, to say that you hated it from one moment to programming it on a concert the next, wow. I mean, that's incredible, actually.
Well, my undergraduate teacher told me once he didn't particularly like Barrio. The Barrio solo sequenza was not his cup of tea. He didn't like teaching it. He didn't like playing it. And then one year he programmed it and wrote huge performance analysis of the work. And for him, he just wanted to get into it. He's like, I want to figure out why I hate this and what bothers me about it. And by studying it, he came around to that piece. Actually, the piece is not bad because now I understand what's happening here. And that's changed my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's always really great to just really think about it and let time do what it does best. I mean, honestly, and just to give something a try. I mean, I've had the same with a couple pieces in the past, and it sounds really weird, but in my undergrad, I really didn't like Albright Sonata. I mean, who doesn't like Albright Sonata? And I just didn't like it, and I was forced to do it in my master's, and so I did it. I don't know if it was a love-hate relationship maybe. And now, I've been asked to program it for a concert and I'm getting back into it now. And it's very comfortable in a lot of ways, but also my life experience has changed and has made me kind of enjoy that music. I mean, it's a very classical piece. We're not talking about something that, is in controversy, overall. But, I think it does mean that time has a kind of way of changing our perspective on things. Yeah.
What is your relationship to jazz?
So I am probably the worst jazz musician in the world. Like at one point, it's funny because I started on flute in like seventh grade. Wait, fourth grade. Sorry, I played flute for until I was 13. So what is that? Eighth grade or something. And then I wanted to join the jazz band. So my teacher, high school teacher, said, "Well, you can play the saxophone." So my mom and we went to the local music store and we bought a saxophone because I wanted to be in the jazz band. And from there, I kind of went totally classical, actually, from that point on. I took lessons at university because I thought it was important to be well-rounded and to know what to do. So I can do some things, but I am the last person to say that I am really, that I know what I'm doing with jazz. I have to work really hard at it, and from a style perspective, and what's going on here from a sound perspective. I mean, so for me, I tend to avoid a lot of jazz, which is sad because I think that there's a lot of fantastic things there, but I just don't play the versatile player kind of role very well. Being honest, absolutely honest. Because you also teach jazz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was my way into saxophone. I mean, I started as a jazz major at North Texas and I did the lab band thing there. And then it became apparent that, I mean, I wanted to be a teacher. So I switched to music ed.
Oh, wow. So you actually started in jazz. Okay. I didn't realize that. I thought you were always on the classical spectrum, So that's actually very, very fascinating.
Well, and I mean, I'm very thankful for it. It's a huge part of my job here at Virginia Tech, directing the jazz band. And at some point in time, everybody has or will study jazz with me in the studio.
Okay. Well, that's really great, actually. I mean, I didn't have, as I said, I took some lessons in university, but that was with Joshua Davis on bass. He's at Penn State now, I think, teaching jazz and bass. And it was never really priority for Dr. Levinsky. I mean, I was in the jazz ensemble at Susquehanna, playing like second tenor or whatever, something that I didn't need to work hard at my solos, or I just needed to play my music down and be happy with it. So but after Susquehanna, I never did anything more with it. So it was never really a big part of my playing. And that's actually sad, I think, because I missed out on a lot, but I kind of really went in one direction and chose that way. And maybe there is some flexibility missing in my playing and my sound, actually, because of that. And I think that makes sense, actually.
All right. Thank you so much, Don Paul. We are out of time for today. So I appreciate all my students being here. Tomorrow is fall break, so have a wonderful, wonderful fall break. One day, a 1 day break, and I will see you all next week.